The Principles of Economics with Applications to Practical Problems by Albert Fetter. Chapter 19. Saving and Production as Affected by the Rate of Interest. Section 1. Saving as Affected by the Interest Rate. 1. In the case of consumption goods, present marginal uses are often less than future uses as judged at the present. The proposition that future goods sometimes have a greater instead of a less value than present goods may at first seem to deny the general fact of economic interest, which is a premium on present over future goods. The contradiction is only apparent, however, and the proposition is merely a proper interpretation of the theory of interest. The assertion that present goods have greater value than future goods, as we have accepted it, requires two explanations. First, it means that this difference exists when the two are judged and compared at the present moment. The future use, when it matures, may be much greater than the present use. Indeed, the very existence of interest depends upon this surplus of value arising by the lapse of time in the future use. Secondly, the proposition does not mean that every concrete good or every use of the goods is worth more in the present than in the future. It means merely that the demand for present goods preponderates, so that a market rate in favor of present possession prevails. In a great many cases, a particular good may have a greater value to be kept for the future than to be used at present, in which case it is kept, or it is exchanged for something else having a higher value in the present. But this preference of the future over the present cannot pass a moderate limit without condemning the person to present misery, and at length to death. On the other hand, the excessive preference of present over future would lead to the using up and wearing out of wealth, to the present enjoyment of every possible resource on the penalty of future misery. Evidently, somewhere between these two extremes there must be, in each economy, a ratio of exchange between present and future, which in fact is the interest rate. This rate, applied to utilities, traces through each good a line analogous to the isothermal line on the map, marking off a zone of utilities for the present and other zones for each period of the future. There is, thus, a close relation between saving and the rate of time discount. Let us illustrate by the case of fruit stored in the cellar for future use. In the fall, after the appetite for apples has been gratified up to a certain point, there still remains a large stock which affords less gratification if consumed at once than if kept for a time. Thus wood, food, and clothing are stored in the summer for the winter's need. Even the animals act on this principle. Squirrels, bees, and ants store up in the season of superfluity for the season of scarcity. The animals recognize, with their feeble intelligence or by instinct, that a time will come when these consumption goods will represent greater importance to their welfare than they do at the moment. It results from the nature of wants and the principle of diminishing utility that in many cases some portion of a large supply of present goods must be worth less now than at a future time. This part, the marginal, less necessary part, will be left for a future time, and it is to this part that our opening proposition refers. This is roughly illustrated by the diagram. Things that cannot be kept, perishable goods, do not permit of this comparison. But if goods that can be kept continue to be used after utility has fallen down the scale, their high value for the future is cast away. Man lives not alone in the present, but, in a far greater measure than do any animals, he lives in the future also. His economic life and his economic judgment comprehend a great number of periods at once. With the aid of memory and imagination, he forecasts the future and compares it with the present. The diminishing utility of goods, therefore, is modified by this fact, that a thing has want gratifying power at different periods. Before man uses goods for an inferior purpose, he will ask whether, if they are kept for the future, they will not gratify a greater want. 2. The gradual rise of a consumption good with a lapse of time, from the lower to the higher degree of gratification, is the rent it yields. The difference in value of present and future rents is expressed by the discount of the future use when it is capitalized at any earlier moment, and emerges in the rise in value as the thing approaches to the time when it can render the later use. Next year, the unit whose use is deferred will afford as much gratification as the earlier units do now, and more than if used at the present moment. The importance of any present utility is compared with its importance a year later, plus interest at a rate which expresses the limit to which future uses are discounted. Anything that makes men feel more the importance of future uses causes them to value those uses more. But the pressure of present want is such that a present use of a lower order competes with a future use of a higher order. Only goods of a lower order, nearer the margin, are reserved for the future. But just as the possibility of using a thing for several different purposes at present causes it to be valued more highly than if it had but one use, so the possibility of reserving to the future a portion of a stock imparts to every unit a higher marginal utility. 3. The saving of present goods for future use is encouraged by the motive of gaining the interest. Many consumption goods grow into higher uses in the hands of the owner, whether he uses them for himself or not. Ice may be stored in midwinter when it is all but a free good and a little labor serves to fill the ice house. Kept until the summer months, the ice rises in value as the desire for it grows. Likewise, the higher price secured by the owner of a thing kept for sale to others reflects the change in utility and affords practically a rent, which is the motive for investing capital in that business. Any saver or abstainer puts aside present wants only when the future good, with the addition of time value or of money interest, appears as large as the present good. Interest is therefore the equalizer of the value of things in different periods. Put into the scale of judgment, when present and future are compared, it helps to balance the disparity in the gratifications given by economic goods in different periods of time. 4. The postponement of present wants results in bettering the economic environment for the future. Economic environment means simply the economic conditions in which men live, the stock of wealth, the supply of useful things with which they are surrounded. This betterment may be only temporary, only for the immediate future. Like the busy bee or the prudent ant, one may in summer store the cellar with consumption goods to be consumed the following winter. But often there is a more lasting way of improving the economic environment, by converting savings into durable indirect agents. The accumulation of wealth that will yield its fruits only after years of growth is the record, so to speak, of the successful competition of forethought with present desires. It means that the two periods have presented their respective claims and that men have decided in favor of the future. Saving thus lifts society from poverty to wealth by the progressive enlargement of the sources of future utilities. 5. Abstinence is a faculty of mind that enables present wants to be subordinated to future wants. Abstinence may be considered as a quality or faculty of the mind, or as an act resulting from that quality. There is little danger of confusion in this usage, but it is well to note the distinction and the fact that the former is the primary meaning. Abstinence expresses an act of the will, a choice made by man. It is the guardian of the future, so to speak, against the greediness of the present. For convenience, we may speak of conservative abstinence as that which keeps men from using up or invading their present stock of resources, and of cumulative abstinence as that which impels them to add to that stock. There is no sharp dividing line, no abrupt break between these two, yet on the whole they differ. There is a quality of mind very like the inertia or momentum of physical matter. The inertia of mind makes men resist, stubbornly, the reduction of wealth and of inherited social position. But it requires a more positive quality of mind to add to wealth at the cost of present sacrifice. Abstinence is embodied in individuals, never elsewhere, and is found in most varying degrees of strength. Upon it depends the growth and betterment of man's environment. Section 2. Conditions favorable to saving. 1. Political security and domestic order are essential to the development of saving. As saving results from a comparison of the future with the present, any lack of certainty regarding the future decreases the appeal it makes. Men employ, roughly, the theory of probabilities in this matter, and count a utility only half as much when there is but one chance in two of enjoying it. In countries where there are constant revolutions and border wars, as in Africa and South America, and in lands where brigandage is common, as in Italy, Macedonia, and Bulgaria, the motive for saving is cut in two. Oppressive and irregular taxation kills the motives of providence and decreases the appeal made by the future. While the miserable subjects of the state live from hand to mouth, the very sources of the public revenue disappear. Improvidence grows upon such a people into a prevailing national custom. Ambition is wanting. Industry is the sport of chance. Economic order and economic prosperity are impossible. 2. Social institutions that give a motive to the individual are essential to saving. Among these institutions the most important are the family, and closely connected with it, the institution of private property, which, in its ideal manifestation, places the responsibility for economic welfare on the individual or the family. Through it, the state says to men, "Save if you will," The wealth and its fruits shall be yours. But if you spend and consume all you can, you alone will suffer the consequences. It is true that the institution of private property never is found in an ideal form. Dishonest public officials weaken and defeat its benefits. Every propertyless family marks a failure in its purpose. Private property is a favorite object of attack by social reformers, but it never can be safely abolished in a civilized state until some other incentive is provided, equally effective to make men subordinate present desires to future welfare. Unless the mass of men can be greatly changed, property creates the only motive that can induce saving regularly and on a large scale. It diffuses responsibility for present consumption. It multiplies the motives for abstinence and thus increases the welfare of all economic society. 3. Opportunity for the investment of small savings favors a spirit of abstinence. The institution of small property, peasant proprietorship, worked powerfully in this direction in many parts of Europe, and the same effects have resulted in America from the wide diffusion of property and land. If the decline in the number of small independent farmers has somewhat weakened this influence in America, in other ways other agencies are effectively performing the same functions. Savings banks, penny banks, building and loan associations, penny provident funds, and other convenient means of investing small sums encourage men to reduce their tobacco bills, their candy bills, their saloon bills, and to lay aside for the winter's coal, for the children's education, for houses, for business investments, and for old age. Probably no one thing has given a greater stimulus to saving than has the development of insurance and the endowment policies in connection with it. While the great modern corporations have destroyed many of the small business enterprises into which so much of the saving of the past was put, at the same time the increase of negotiable paper, of loans, and of stock and joint stock companies has opened up other large fields for investors. 4. Variations in the rate of discount of the future react upon the spirit of saving in various ways. This very general proposition requires more detailed discussion. In general, a high rate of interest gives a large motive to save, for as the discount on the future is large, so is the reward for waiting. But this favoring motive may be offset by other unfavorable conditions, and is, in fact, whenever the high rate continues. In countries backward economically, where war, brigandage, and political oppression prevail, the rate of interest is frequently 10 and 12% on the best secured loans. A high interest rate does not of itself ensure a high degree of cumulative abstinence. It is only one of several factors. But in a new and favored country like America, a high rate of interest is a strong stimulus to saving. Again, interest may fall while saving continues at the same or a greater pace. Ordinarily, a fall from 6% to 5%, giving men a smaller motive for abstinence, would be expected to cause less saving. Yet this is not always the case. Custom and example help to fix a habit of saving in individuals and cause them to continue saving at a lower rate of interest. With the growth of wealth, the prevailing ideas as to the amount needed for a competence change impelling to greater saving. The tendency, however, of a fall in the rate of interest is to weaken, and that of a rise of the rate, other things being equal, is to strengthen the motive to save. But the influence of the interest rate on saving is relative to the character of men. Section 3. Influence of the interest rate on methods of production. 1. The individual saver is enabled to improve the agents that he uses. The simplest case is presented when means of enjoyment are improved and made more durable. If Crusoe on his island spends less time and fewer resources on gratifying his immediate wants, he may improve the quality of his clothing and the convenience of his house and furniture. By thus putting his consumption goods into durable instead of temporary forms, he will increase, eventually, the sum of utilities enjoyed. Again, abstinence permits the tools of the laborer to be made more convenient. If the farmer spends less time in the garden, and he and his family live on plainer food, while he makes a plow, mends a rake, and builds a shed, he will be enabled thereafter to gather a greater crop with less effort. 2. Consumption goods, when saved, may be exchanged for services, and these may be used to create durable agents. Various ways are open to one wishing to increase his stock of durable agents. He may forego seeking immediate enjoyments while he makes durable agents himself. Or he may make and save a stock of consumption goods, a surplus supply for the future, and exchange it for durable agents. Finally, one who has accumulated consumption goods can always exchange them for the services of those seeking subsistence and enjoyment, and thus in control of a labor force, he can direct it toward the production of new forms of productive agents. 3. In modern industry, saving frequently takes the form of money, which is then loaned to productive borrowers. This is the typical form of saving in modern industry. As it is more and more the case that income takes first the form of money, saving most conveniently takes the money form. The clerk on a salary of $60 a month spends $50 and saves $10, which he lends to a neighbor or deposits in a savings bank. The borrower is thus empowered to increase his stock of productive agents in the measure that the lender has limited his consumption. The complexity of the process by which money saving becomes embodied through a money loan in new productive agents should not blind to its real nature. The money is saved as a means to the exchange of present goods for future income. Money, even in our day, is occasionally stored away for future use under hearthstones or in old stockings and hollow trees. But this is a primitive and wasteful method, involving the loss of all the additional rents that its exchange and investment would yield. If the money saved by the thrifty saver is loaned to a thriftless borrower, wealth is not increased, but merely changes hands. The prodigal, mortgaging his wealth, spending the money, and living beyond his income, absorbs the savings of the other. One saves and adds to wealth, the other consumes it. There is no net increase of goods, but two individuals have shifted positions. Each has gotten his reward of growing affluence or penury. The normal end, however, of savings and loans is productive. The borrower, in getting control of purchasing power, aims to put a new machine where it will be useful, to remove obstacles, and to make economic agents more effective. Along the borderland of industry, the active and alert borrower seeks out opportunities to make new agents earn a rental, and having found the opening, turns to the money market for the means to profit by it. 4. A fall in the rate of interest normally accompanies an increase in the mass, efficiency, and valuation of durable economic agents. A lower rate of interest means a higher capitalization of all incomes. It is not that either can be called the cause of the other. Rather, both are aspects of the same thing, the interest rate merely registering the change in capitalization. If the rate of interest has been 5%, an income of $100 has been capitalized at $2,000. When the rate falls to 4%, the income is recapitalized to $2,500. All along the line of investment, there is an increase in the value of the durable economic agents. Another phase of the change is the greater complexity of the processes of industry. Production becomes technically more complex when interest falls. Rental, product, and present goods bear a smaller ratio to the value of capital, and therefore it becomes advantageous to apply newly formed capital to uses which before did not justify the investment. Where formerly the utility of a second tool did not justify its making, now can be made to earn the smaller rental needed to balance its capital value. One form, therefore, which the change takes is a multiplication of the tools already used. Things are placed wherever most convenient. Another form this change takes is the putting of new links into the chain of technical production. Cost of operation constantly is compared with fixed charges, the interest with the capital investment. Expensive improvements on railroads, the straightening of curves, the tunneling of mountains, the reducing of grades, the replacement of lighter by heavier rails, have been made possible by a fall in the rate of interest. A fall in the rate of interest disturbs the equilibrium that has been arrived at between the cost of operation, the amount paid for wages, coal, etc., and the income on permanent investment. If the rate of interest has been 5% and falls to 4%, many permanent improvements before unwise become economical. $1,000 paid annually in wages then balanced an interest charge on a capital investment of $20,000. Now it balances the interest charge on $25,000. It becomes a paying thing for the railroad to abandon or throw aside an enormous capital represented by the old, less perfect roadbed and build a new one alongside of it. The changes of this kind one sees in traveling on the great and progressive railroads reflect in part the growth of traffic, but in part also a change of the interest rate, making it a net saving to increase the capital investment in order to reduce the cost of operation per unit of traffic. The benefits of saving, viewed broadly, are not confined to the owner of the wealth saved, but are diffused throughout society in the degree that they increase and improve the industrial environment and thus raise the efficiency of production. Such a change works the same results as would a magical increase in the fertility of the soil, an improvement in the richness and accessibility of natural mineral stores, or in the quantity and quality of artificial appliances. Chapter 20.